Now, our final story, and I know that you're going to have something to say about this, Alpesh, in the Daily Telegraph, is that selective deafness is actually real. Now, this is something I've claimed for the longest time. I'm sure you've claimed it from time to time, haven't you? But it's actually real.
He's not listening. You've proved your point.
I tell you, the best line in this was where the researcher said, I suspect men are more susceptible, but that's not based on any scientific knowledge.
There you go.
That's based on him thinking.
We all do.
Him at home thinking, yeah, well, okay, this is.
I think there's a clear gender divide, though. Men do tune out as and when it suits them. Notably, when the wife says it's your turn to actually do the washing up, or would you mind getting your dirty linen together, please?
If only they would realise, why bother saying it then? No. How much of a hint do you need from us? We're not listening.
Alpesh, I would love to say it's lovely to see you, and in fact it is. Alpesh Patel, our favourite newspaper reviewer from Pryfinian Partners. Thank you very much indeed. At BBC World News this morning. Thank you. We are joined by Alpesh Patel from Pryfinian Partners. Let's get to the hair in a minute, shall we? But
it's a sensitive subject.
Sure it is. We'll get there.
Okay, moving on. Dirty tricks at Facebook. Alleged dirty tricks.
Yes, but wily, clever journalists were not fooled by this. What had happened here is a PR company went to a group of journalists, told them that Google were not so good with privacy either.
It's ironic, given the privacy issues on Facebook.
Exactly, and the journalists didn't, the PR company rather didn't mention they were acting for Facebook, so Facebook was trying to improve its reputation by making other people look bad. I mean, it really is school playground kind of tricks, and it got caught out. But as I say, it's because journalists are absolutely shrewd and they're unmanipulatable by PR companies. It's a wonder we have PR companies at all.
It's great that you looked at us when you said that about journalists being
absolutely.
shrewd
You
and not
saw
the kind
through
of
the
people
story
prone to
and reported
manipulation.
it, and that's what landed Facebook in trouble. It's the quality of global journalism.
Moving on to dangerous hair, a dangerous sport, actually. I mean, I was treated to a glimpse of Australian rules football a little bit earlier, and it is no joke, is it? So no wonder the hair comes into it.
I was actually playing. I was playing rugby the other week, and I got sent off for dangerous fat. I have to say, the other 10-year-olds were rather injured by me, but that's a different issue. But no, I think it can be dangerous.
You didn't have hair like this, chaps.
No, and you could see how, on a health and safety basis, that is quite lethal with the Brill cream and all the rest of it. As I say, I wish I did have hair like that.
Rock-solid gel,
it sort of slipped through the hands, really, wasn't it?
Alpesh
what more could I
Patel
say?
from Pryfinian Partners.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for taking us through the papers. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
To get religion if you haven't got it already.
Let's look at, let's get your thoughts, I should say, really, on the European debt crisis and this latest phase, because we've actually had quite mixed reports in the newspapers today. You look at the Spanish newspaper, and of course they're really applauding what happened in Portugal, perhaps not surprisingly, but if you look at the Wall Street Journal, it says Portugal's failing to quell fears with its auction. What's your view?
Yeah, in case either you or your viewers don't know, the financial markets are basically a con trick. They're a confidence trick. And the Portuguese government have worked this out, and they've pulled off the con trick. And the con trick that they've pulled off is that they've managed to get a bit of confidence in the markets because they've said, look, we've got access to funds. But Bloomberg have called it right, so it's neither Wall Street Journal or the other papers. Bloomberg have called it right. They've said it's bought them breathing space, and that's all it's bought them. Now, the Times have been very restrained, a Murdoch-owned paper, which is reliant somewhat on the government in terms of its bid for B-Sky B, so they've been very restrained. But the problem the Prime Minister's going to have is he does want to be statesmanlike. He would want to help the euro because he will follow that argument that we're all interconnected and we need to make sure the euro doesn't plunge and all the rest of it. The problem he's going to have is not necessarily the Times, who, as I say, have been restrained, but when you look at the other British papers, they haven't been so restrained, and what they're saying is, no, wait a minute, this is a crisis, we stayed out of the euro. In any event, when the EEC was formed, the French kept on vetoing British interests. In other words, they're being very jingoistic and so on, and that's going to be the problem for the Prime Minister, how to be statesmanlike when the media isn't willing to follow you.
Let's go back to the whole question of inflation. Well, we've got this now in the Financial Times. US crop stock forecast deepen fears of food crisis.
I told you, end of the world. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
if you haven't read your Bible recently, read it because it's all in there. That's market forecast. And it's going to get worse this year. And it's not just with food, it's commodities more generally. But it is going to get worse because there's supply constraints due to natural disasters. But
welcome. Good to see you. We'll start with the Independent. Why won't the world help us? I mean, the tide seems to be turning for now against the rebels as Gaddafi, pushes this onslaught. But it really does highlight the difficulty of the international community, what to do, how to do it, when to do it.
By the world, they mean the West, and the reason the West won't help, because look what happens when you invade countries for oil. Oil still goes to $110, and your country still ends up in an economic mess because your natives cause credit crunches and so on. So what's the point of invading countries for oil? But it's not just that we haven't got enough money in the West to help the Libyans. We certainly don't have the military appetite because we don't have the money, because oil isn't worth it. And who needs the perception? You know, the West going into an Arab country, who needs any of that headache? But you're absolutely right. The world has not yet found a solution to when there is a humanitarian crisis, whether in African nations, whether in Middle East countries, what to do and how to do it. And sanctions are counterproductive because the man at the top causing the problems has already got his money. Even if you put sanctions on the people, you're only harming the people. You're not actually solving.
Let's look at the Cengiz brothers and the being arrested with the collapse of this Icelandic bank. This is going to take some time to unravel, isn't it?
Who would have thought that with all the banks that collapsed due to the credit crunch over the last 2 years, and there were dozens in the US, we obviously heard of Lehman Brothers, but don't forget all the smaller ones, who would have thought that really the first set of arrests would have come due to Iceland? Of all the places. Apparently there was no alleged wrongdoing when it came to RBS, when it came to Halifax Bank of Scotland, when it came to Northern Rock, when it even came to Lehman Brothers. No wrongdoing whatsoever, but apparently there's alleged wrongdoing in relation to this Icelandic bank. You're absolutely right, it'll take years.
I detect a cynical tone here.
Well, it's great that somebody's doing something, if there is any wrongdoing, in relation to this. But what the heck happened for the last 3 years with everything else? You lose billions, there's alleged mis-selling, there's a massive global crisis. Apparently, nobody did anything wrong, though. Economics is about expectations and perception. And you mustn't scare people by letting them know what's really going on. So you have very low bars with stress tests and say, oh, no, don't worry, our banks are okay now. Because God forbid you tell them the truth, that actually banks may still be in a precarious...
Alpesh, making a lot of friends this morning. Let's move on to something that I'm sure many of our viewers this morning don't want to hear.
Well, it's an interesting point. Again, you talk about how to win friends and influence people. Strikes. The trick with strikes is you have to give the appearance of your threat being credible, because actually you don't want to go on strike, but you've got to give the appearance. But at the same time, not show that you're gung-ho and that you're really looking forward to it. And how do you get that balance? Because you don't want to appear unpopular and lose the public. Now, the problem is, at time of austerity, and we're not technically in a recession in the United Kingdom, but it feels like it, you're not going to get much public support. You might do for pay and for pensions when there's a booming economy, but in this environment, you're not. Sadly, pretty much yes. You can either work longer or you can pay higher taxes and work for a shorter period of time. Whichever way you cut it, you're not going to like the outcome. And it's not your fault, but we, as in the state, is going to be taking a lot more of your money. And I'm surprised there haven't been more strikes in places like Spain, where they have a greater tradition of it, let alone the French. The French should be leading the way. They should be sort of burning sheep on the roads, but they're not doing it. So if the French don't do it, I can guarantee you British unions don't have it in them to do it.
They won't do it.
Exactly. Let's look at Ireland, though, again, in those austerity measures. And again, the Irish politicians have decided to take a pay cut. That's not unusual. The British politicians decided to do that. Is it all window dressing, though?
Why do heads of government get paid anything? Anywhere. I mean, I can understand why the Libyan leader gets paid billions, because obviously, he's got an important country to run. But why on earth do Western heads of government get paid anything more than £1? Steve Jobs takes home, the head of Apple takes home $1 out of Europe. Then the head of government, the Taoiseach, should be taking 0 pay.
and saying, look, I'm leading the way because I don't need this money, and I'm going to be on the lecture circuit in 2-3 years anyway, and I'll make it up then. So it is window dressing. It's good that they're leading the way, but, you know, we're talking about somebody going from, I think it was 213,000 euro to 200,000 euro. Is he really going to notice the difference? Is he going to miss it? I mean, you know, his in-state paid-for accommodation, and not bad accommodation either. Flights apparently are also covered.
David Cameron, are you listening? But what about Kate Moss and her cigarette? They can do all they can, very briefly though, and this just ruins it, doesn't it?
Well, it's not the cigarette that worries me, it's what the heck is she wearing that worries me. I mean, yeah, that's your bigger problem. It's the greatest advertisement for not smoking there ever is, because if that's what smokers look like, then, you know, all these young teenagers who are waking up and reading The Guardian as they go to school, looking at this role model, are thinking, my God, I don't want to smoke.
Alpesh, we're going to have to leave it there. Alpesh Patel, winning friends and influencing people this morning. That's our newspaper review.
Stay with us. We have more news and business. Goodbye.